What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Dynasty Coaches podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Dylan. Got Nick. He's going to be on here in a couple minutes, and then Charlie is going to miss this week. But we will. We actually got our first guest on, first guest ever on the Dynasty Coaches podcast, Coach Hunter.
What an honor. Well, thanks for having me. I know we've been trying for a couple of weeks to kind of make this happen, but life gets in the way. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to, I love talking fantasy. I just started dipping my toes into Dynasty a couple of years ago. So
nice. Very cool. Hunter is a writer with us at the fantasycoaches.com. He just started, how long have you been with us now? A couple months?
I just started, back in June.
Yeah, so
it's like my first article, and excited to be here. I really am.
Yeah, make sure you guys check that out. It's a good article. So we got a good show for you guys today. We finally got some preseason football back, so we're going to talk to you about our reactions from a couple of the preseason things that happened, and then as promised, we got wide receivers this week. We're going to go over the AFC wide receivers this week, and then next week we'll touch on the NFC wide receivers just because there's so many. So let's get right into it with our fantasy news here. So we'll start out with James White retiring. Great season for a 4th or 5th round pick.
Yeah.
Great career. He's gone, but there's still some Patriots running backs that are definitely worth it. You got Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. James White was that receiving back. Do you think Ramondre Stevenson, who's getting the bulk of the running back one touches this year, is going to get some of those receiving receptions?
I definitely do. Just watching Ramondre Stevenson last year, he showed flashes as a receiver. He had juice. It looks natural. You can tell he's one of those guys that passes the eyeball test when you're watching him catch the ball. It looks smooth, natural. So I do think that's definitely a good thing for him. James White has a special place in my heart. He was one of those guys that always found his way onto my rosters. And he was just, you plug him in bye weeks, flex play, and he always delivered when it really mattered. So hats off to a great career.
Oh yeah, I agree. I love James White, but I don't know. He was a lot better in PPR, so I'm hoping Stevenson can pick up some of that. He had 18 targets last year, caught 14 of them. So with the talks of Damian Harris possibly being shopped around right now too, you might have Stevenson and nobody else really.
Yeah.
So Stevenson could be in for a huge workload with the Patriots this year if they get rid of him. So that'd be nice because I got a couple shares of Stevenson.
Yeah, there you go.
In Dynasty, he's still young. This is just his second year, so we could be looking at star for a while if he's the only back. So, moving on here, Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. He sets a deadline for his contract to be finished. He wants that new contract before week 1. Kind of puts the Ravens in a tough spot, but we all know it's coming.
I don't know. He's one of those players. He's going to get paid. It's just not. It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of when.
I agree. I just hope that win is before because I don't want to see a holdout for the first couple of weeks of the season.
And then all the Rashad guys have been holding on to Rashad Bateman. That would be heartbreaking.
Yep, that kills Rashad Bateman for sure. So. Hopefully we get that done, and although it would be crazy to see their backup again. I can't remember his name right now, but
it's Tyler Huntley or whatever.
Yeah, he balled out last year. So
he did. I lost to him in a championship last year.
Did you really? Yeah. Sorry to bring that up.
No, that's all right. It happens.
Yeah, so hopefully they get that taken care of, and we can see Lamar Jackson out there because he's MVP. He's been MVP before.
Yeah, those guys, he'll get paid.
Yeah. So a couple more things I just wanted to touch on. I mean, we saw a lot in the first week of the preseason. We saw Kenny Pickett get his first start, or not first start, but first action in his career. He looked pretty good, man. How do you feel about Kenny Pickett?
I mean, I like Kenny Pickett. I'm just afraid that Mitch Trubisky is going to start off this season, and he's going to do just good enough to keep that job away from Kenny Pickett for who knows how long. I mean, they have all the weapons. Whoever's going to be back there has every opportunity to produce. So
I agree. Trubisky looked good too. So I mean, good is a kind of a maybe overstatement with Trubisky.
Yeah. He looks good, and then he'll do what he does and fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. So we might be seeing Pickett, I don't know, midway through the season maybe if they're struggling, because they got a good division, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Browns, who knows what they're going to be like with watching out for the first 6, hopefully just 6. But you got Baltimore and Cincinnati, who are going to be tough teams. So you might be looking at Steelers being bottom of the division this year.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's been forever since that's happened. So we'll move on here. Another thing is Zach Wilson hurt his knee. They thought it was initially going to be an ACL tear, but it ends up being just a bone bruise and a meniscus tear. I think he's out 4 to 6 weeks, I want to say.
I saw 2 to 4, but it's
2 to 4.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things I feel like it could end up being 6 weeks, bring him back slowly.
Yeah. I mean, that's good because that would have killed Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson for me.
That was my biggest disappointment with him getting hurt was not – I mean, because he's not a, QB1 by any means, but those guys, they need that chemistry. You need to build that chemistry, and, it definitely hurts their stock.
Yeah, for sure. So I think those – sorry. Add there. So those were kind of the 2 big things I want to touch on for the preseason week 1 games. Not a lot of starters play a whole lot of significant snaps week 1, but anything else come up that you thought was significant about week 1?
I think you're talking about the Steelers, watching George Pickens.
Yes.
That he stood out. He caught that awesome touchdown grab in the back of the end zone.
Yep.
Immediately, his stock's on the rise already just from 1 preseason game.
Oh, yeah. Pickens is looking awesome.
Yeah. And he's, all the reports, he's been a star at camp, and literally haven't heard one bad thing about him yet.
It's unfortunate for Claypool because he's hurt right now, so he's able to compete.
Yeah, exactly. I do think Pickens will be involved from day 1.
Yeah, I think so too. He's looking like a fantasy stud.
Yeah,
for sure. So, but it could be this year's Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. I mean, that's a stretch. I get it, but he's looking like the best rookie wide receiver right now.
Right now, yeah.
Preseason. So, but that will do it for the news and notes. Let's go ahead and get into our main topic of the night, the AFC wide receivers. Usually I have slides to show stats and stuff, but it's a busy week and I did not get a chance to get to it, but I will definitely get that up for the NFC wide receivers. But we're good. We can go on with we'll start with the Buffalo Bills wide receivers. We'll start in the AFC East. Stephon Diggs, I mean, he had a very good season last year, statistic-wise, but a lot of people said he had a down year for them. He never had that real boom year that you want from a top, 5-10 receiver.
Right.
But he finished with 103 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Do you think he can repeat? Do you think he's going to be better this year, worse? What do you think?
I mean, I think he'll be right up there at the top again. That's just Josh Allen playing at MVP levels year after year. He's just one of the most consistent receivers in the game. You know, you can be confident throwing him in as your wide receiver one week after week and know that he's going to produce. And that's how he finished so high. I mean, like you said, he didn't have the huge boom games, but he's just consistently good every week. There's no bust games for him at all.
He never killed you at all. So I don't know, any receiver that's going to be thrown to by Josh Allen. I mean, I'm in on.
Yeah, exactly. Sign me up for that.
Exactly. So especially the number one wide receiver for him. I mean, Stephon Diggs is a guy that hasn't received less than 160 targets since he went to Buffalo. It's 2 years, 166, 164. So he's going to see a ton of targets year in and year out. So you can pencil him in. I mean, first year he was at 127 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's still one of the best wide receivers in the league, and he's going to continue it, I think.
Yeah, if your floor is 160 targets,
yep,
you know, you really can't go wrong.
Yep. We're going to move on to Gabriel Davis. Everybody's seems like the offseason darling after his 200-yard, 4-touchdown game in the
playoffs
championship game last year. He's a guy that, you know, hasn't been involved. He's been hurt a lot in his career, but I don't know. It just seems like whenever he's on the field, the Bills are better. He's a big touchdown guy. What do you think about Gabe Davis?
I am all aboard the Gabe Davis hype train. I have him on one of my dynasty teams, and I actually tried to shop him a little bit after that game because it was like peak value, you know. But I don't regret holding on to him. I didn't get the kind of trade that I'd be willing to let go of him because I do think he's going to be a stud. Easy wide receiver 2 end of year. I really do think that. Again, talking about how Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I really can see Gabriel Davis putting up wide receiver 2 numbers this year. And he's one of those guys that falls into that category of like the best wide receiver 2 for his own team. You have like the T. Higgins and the Mike Williams. Like Gabe Davis is not far behind those guys to me.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a chance to be legit. I mean, like I said, he's a big touchdown hog right now. He's got 7 touchdowns and 6 touchdowns in both the years that he's been there. And like I said, he hasn't really played a whole lot, 62 and 63 targets. So you start getting 100-plus targets possibly for him. His touchdowns might be 13, 14.
Right. So, and if he's on the field, almost every snap, opposite of Stephon Diggs, which takes away the better cornerback of every team, they'll be on Diggs. It opens it up for him. And I really think this is going to be just like the huge breakout year. Everyone's expecting it, but I don't see how it can't happen.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost a shoo-in. So, Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie, they're the other 2 kind of fantasy relevant wide receivers. Isaiah McKenzie is more of a special teams guy, but do you think that it's going to be Isaiah McKenzie or Jamison Crowder as their number 3?
So I started out believing that it was going to be Crowder, but as camp goes on, I've seen reports that Isaiah McKenzie is more involved. He's just the younger, and he's kind of the same way. He hasn't had a whole lot of time on the field just because there's been so many good players ahead of him on the depth chart. But whenever in the small sample size that he has the ball in his hands, he looks really, really good. So it's hard to say. If you put a gun in my head, I would say it's Isaiah McKenzie going to get more targets, more opportunity end of season. Because Jamison Crowder is, he's getting up there in age. I know he's been very consistent, but
yeah, he's entering his 8th season. So,
and yeah, we've seen everything that he can do. We know what he is.
Yeah, he's just kind of that possession guy. I mean, he's not going to have your boom weeks at all, but he's not. I mean, he can have weeks where he's not going to be really involved at all.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I would think. Crowder gets more targets, I would think, but Isaiah McKenzie is the more productive receiver, I think.
Right, yeah.
He showed it last year coming on late in the season, and I mean he looked decent. So, and then like you said, all camp long so far has been all talk about my Isaiah McKenzie, and Crowder's kind of gone away. So
yeah, and Crowder just like the low A-dot average depth. I mean, it's just short in the middle of the field. You know what to expect from Crowder. So
yeah, let's go and move on to the Dolphins. They traded for Tyreek Hill. I mean, I don't know. Him and Adams were the two big trades this year, but Dolphins got a steal, I think, with Tyreek Hill coming.
Yeah.
Who do you think has more targets this year? I mean, you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
So I'm a huge Jalen Waddle fan. I traded for him in one of my dynasty leagues that, had to send everything to get him, but I think he's going to be good for a long time. They're the same type of player, like one play touchdown type of players.
Yeah.
And I know that Mike McDaniel is going to get both these guys involved. I honestly, at the end of the year, expect their production to be almost identical, maybe besides a couple touchdowns here and there. But I don't know. Tyreek is one of those guys that as long as he's on the field, he's going to produce.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this could be I don't want to say lesser version of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins type production, but I think that they could be that good. I mean,
I do too.
Tyreek Hill, everybody's knocking Tyreek Hill because he's going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua, but
I like Mike McDaniel. I'm not a big Tua believer by any means, but I know that Mike McDaniel is he's gonna manufacture these touches, behind the line of scrimmage, screen plays, just quick 2-step dropbacks, release the ball, and get the ball in these guys' hands and let them do the rest. And so, I mean, Tua's stats are going to look, I think, pretty good at the end of the year. But when you're watching him during the game, he might not look any better than he is right now.
Yeah.
But I just think that Mike McDaniel is going to turn both of these guys into huge producers this year and going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we see it all the time with, most recent was Stephon Diggs going to Buffalo, kind of had Josh Allen break out at that point. Allen wasn't great. I mean, he was starting to come into his own, but he really started becoming the number one quarterback whenever Stephon Diggs got there.
Right, gave him that true alpha receiver.
Exactly. So you're getting now Tyreek Hill to join Jalen Waddle. You could be looking at Tua being a breakout candidate himself.
That's true. Yeah, I can definitely see it.
Yeah, for sure. So, what about Cedric Wilson? He's going to be their third receiver. It looks like he had a pretty good year last year in Dallas. Do you think he can repeat? Do you think he's going to be NFC 3 receiver?
I mean, I like Cedric Wilson. I am a Cowboys fan, so I got to see him every week. But I just don't know if there's going to be enough to go around for him to be really productive. I mean, there could be weeks that he has a long touchdown or, a few catches here and there, but it's going to be very hard to predict.
Yeah.
Chase Edmonds going over there, I think he's going to get a lot of look too. And then you always still have Mike Gesicki, who I don't think he's, not like he's going to get 100 and something targets, but he's definitely a big piece of the pie.
Yep. I think Cedric Wilson's the odd man out because, like you said, Chase Edmonds is a very good receiving running back. And you got Gesicki, who's still going to get his. I mean, not to mention they have Hunter Long, the
right
Italian last year that could step up and play a pretty big role. So I just think Cedric Wilson it's gonna take an injury for him to be relevant. So I don't know if I would try trading for him or anything in Dynasty, but definitely the other two. I think this is the Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle show.
Right. Yeah, Cedric Wilson's one of those guys that needs to be rostered, like you said, in case there is an injury, but he'll probably never be on your starting roster.
For sure. Let's go and move on to New England here. You got Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, and Jacoby Myers. Yuck.
Yeah, not great.
This is one of the reasons why I'm really low on Mac Jones. if this is what the Patriots are going to give him, I don't see how Mac Jones finishes. But do you see one of those out of those three names that I just mentioned? Which one do you think has possibility of being fantasy relevant?
To me, it's Devontae Parker. I think he's the biggest red zone threat out of the three. But, like you said, yuck. It's a run-first team. They play slow. They're not going to go out there and ask Mac Jones to turn these receivers into superstars. They just want to move the ball consistently. So Devontae Parker, I would like to have him on my team, but I just don't think there's a lot in that whole offense receiving wise. And you still have Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry too, who are both red zone weapons.
That's what I was going to say. I think that this is a ground and pound team and throw to our tight ends because, out of those three, I don't want any of them, but if I had to pick, I think I'd pick Myers just because the yardage. But really, I think the possible fantasy guy that's not that I didn't mention that could be somebody I'd take a shot on is Tyquan Thornton. He's been looking good this preseason so far. So that'd be probably the only receiver I would take a shot on.
Right.
But I don't know. They're just none of them are inspiring. So
yeah, Damian Harris had 17 touchdowns on the ground last year.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he's pretty much a lock to hit double digits again this year.
Yep.
So
I agree.
You're going to have boom weeks, but it's going to be very hard to predict.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on to the Jets. We got two of the premier young wide receivers in the league, at least for dynasty purposes. Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. Which one? First of all, you got Zach Wilson hurt. Hopefully that doesn't kill any early season production that you might get from these guys. But in Dynasty, who do you think is the better play?
I'm a big fan of Elijah Moore. I really am. The way he came on at the end of last year, they have that chemistry. I'm not saying Garrett Wilson. I think it's going to be close, but we've seen it with Elijah Moore already. We saw the breakout happen towards the end of last year. So I'd be willing to push my chips in more towards him instead of the unknown guy. But I do think Garrett Wilson's going to be super good too.
I agree. I actually had Elijah Moore as my number 2 wide receiver right behind Jamar Chase last year in that draft class. So I'm a huge Elijah Moore fan. I think that what he showed, I think I've been seeing all the stuff on Twitter about him and Facebook and all that, but I read somewhere that he was the wide receiver 4 from weeks like 4 to 13 or something like that before he got hurt.
Right.
So I think he's a stud. I think he's going to continue to be a stud. And then last year, he didn't really have anybody to take coverage away from him. Now he's getting Garrett Wilson, who is, by all means, some people had him as the number 1 wide receiver this year in this draft class. So I think they're going to complement each other great, and we could be looking at 2 very good top 24, at least top 36 wide receivers.
And that's what I was going to say. I don't know if either of these guys finishes as a wide receiver 1. Yeah. I can see a path where that would happen. Yeah. But I think it's much more realistic that they're both top 24, between 12 and 20, somewhere in that range. I can see it for both guys.
I agree. It's going to be hard. I haven't really seen which one Zach Wilson has kind of had the preference for so far this preseason, but I think they're both going to have great years this year. So
we just need that year 2 step forward for Zach Wilson.
Yep, that's going to be the big thing is can he step forward? Because if not, you could be looking at the Jets possibly making a trade next year or possibly going after one of the rookie quarterbacks next year's draft. So,
Right.
We'll go and move on to the AFC North. Start with the Baltimore Ravens. Is there anybody else besides Rashad Bateman that you are targeting with the Baltimore Ravens here receiving core?
Not really. I actually just oh man, it's already going to slip my name. I just packaged a trade. Hold on, I'm drawing a blank right here.
There you
go. Devin Duvernay. I actually packaged him and someone else in the Dynasty League for Tony Pollard because I was pretty weak at running back. And this is one of those deals that you need to monitor. You know, it's obviously the Rashad Bateman season, but you're going to want to keep an eye on who's that number 2 and the kind of targets they're getting. But this being a run-first offense, Mark Andrews is the touchdown threat. Rashad Bateman breakout, everyone's expecting. And then you have so much Lamar Jackson at the red zone too. It's just hard to predict anything from like one of the wide receiver 2s to really be a threat.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I'm going to say somebody, if I have to say somebody, it's going to be Devin Duvernay just because he's been there for a while. But I'm not high on anybody else but Rashad Bateman. I think Rashad Bateman's probably in line for a big breakout year. But, I mean, it's hard because last year, even though Rashad Bateman was good, he didn't ever have any top 5 finishes, so he wasn't like a Jamar Chase good. He wasn't even Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins good type guy. And he's in a very run heavy offense. Then on top of that, red zone targets are going to go to Mark Andrews,
right? Pretty
much 100% of the time. So I think that he's going to be a breakout candidate, and I have him as a breakout candidate. But it's very easy to see the case where he lets a lot of people down.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, I'm not going to sit there and tell people to trade Rashad Bateman, but this could be his peak value. You know, before everyone's expecting the breakout, even in redraft leagues, he's going in like the wide receiver 2 range, and there's a real chance that doesn't happen.
I agree. I mean, Dynasty, by all means, he's a go out and get and hope for the best. But redraft for sure. I don't know if I'm going after him right now.
There's other receivers in that range that I'd probably rather have.
Exactly. So we'll go and move on to the Cincinnati Bengals. Really, they got 3 great wide receivers in Cincinnati. Out of Chase and Higgins, I mean, you got Chase. I mentioned this early. You're getting Chase, and we got to go after Chase in the first round.
Right.
But T. Higgins, you can get 3rd, 4th round. For value, who do you have? I mean, they're both going to be great, but
I mean, I know that T. Higgins is going a couple rounds later, but I would still want Chase in the first round. I mean, he is like otherworldly good. I really do think that. Yeah. What was he? Wasn't he the highest drafted receiver ever in the draft, like the NFL?
I think he
was very close.
Yeah, he was very close. So,
and he has that connection with Joe Burrow. I don't know. I mean, what he did last year, that could be just the beginning. He could put up numbers like that for years and years.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd rather have Higgins. I mean, Chase is top 2 receiver in the league. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not going to say he's not. But the way I build teams, I typically will go heavy in the first 2 rounds of running backs just because positional scarcity and all that. But I'm a big believer in T. Higgins. He's more consistent than Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is going to have those weeks where he's just weeks 17 where he just fucking went crazy.
Yeah, and there is a little bit of recency bias on that.
Yeah,
people are remembering that.
then he has some weeks where he kind of fell off and was nothing. So T. Higgins, he's going to be that number 2 wide receiver more often than not. He's not going to have a ton of boom weeks, but he's not going to be the type of receiver that kills your team either. So
let me ask you this: where would you end up taking Chase? Like, how many running backs would have to go in like the first round of dynasties for you to pull the trigger on Chase versus taking a running back? Are you thinking like back into the first round or middle of the first round?
In a 1 QB, probably back of the first. Maybe in a 12-team league, maybe 8 or 9. I mean, I'd definitely take Taylor and we'll say Dynasty because it's a Dynasty year. Taylor, Mixon, Harris. Still probably take.
You want to say CMC?
I'd still take CMC. Kamara, I'd still take ahead of him. Javonte Williams, I think I'd take ahead of him. And probably Swift. I think I'm forced to take Swift ahead of him too. But he's not my wide receiver 1. I think Justin Jefferson is my wide receiver 1.
I would agree with that.
So, but he's definitely my wide receiver 2. So it's probably around 8 or 9 overall that I would take him. So, other guy, Tyler Boyd. He's been actually pretty good in his career. Cincinnati's going to throw the ball so much because they're just that good. Tyler Boyd, he came close to 100 targets last year. So I think he had like 98 targets. What do you feel about Tyler Boyd? Is he going to be fantasy relevant again?
I actually think Tyler Boyd is very good. He's almost being left for dead just because Chase and Higgins were so good last year. But you're talking about this is an offense that's going to throw the ball a ton. Joe Burrow, I still think, is only going to get better. We haven't seen the best from him yet. And if the target share, even if there's, a 1 or 2% dip each from Chase and Higgins, Boyd, I feel like, is going to be the guy soaking it up. Mixon gets his, but they don't really throw the tight end very much.
Mm-hmm.
And Mixon has had a problem staying healthy. And then you're talking about if an injury happened to Chase or Higgins, this is a guy that's going to be 120 targets at least, like somewhere in that range. So I do think he's definitely a sleeper in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, he might be the best value play right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you said, he's being forgotten, and he had 94 targets last year. I mean, that's really good for a number 3 wide receiver on the team. So, like you said, if an injury occurs to either Chase or Higgins, you're looking at a stud for, I don't know, he's going late. So, I would definitely target him for sure as a potential sleeper.
Yeah, so, I think he's, like you said, the best value right now because he's going to be involved.
Yeah. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns. They just traded for Amari Cooper this last offseason. He's getting up there in age, but he's been a good receiver his entire career. What do you think? Does he continue what he was doing in Dallas, or is he going to fall off a little bit?
I mean, I think he's still got a couple really good years left in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I do think you get him in a little bit of a value right now because of the whole Deshaun Watson situation. Jacoby Brissett's most likely going to be the starter for at least 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about when Deshaun Watson does finally come back, Amari Cooper is the alpha receiver.
Mm-hmm.
There's people are talking about David Njoku being a sleeper this year because they really don't have that many people to throw to.
Yep.
So I like Amari Cooper. I think it'd be a good time to trade for him in Dynasty because of the dip with Deshaun Watson being out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
and then hope you have a true wide receiver 1 when Deshaun Watson comes back.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be now to trade for him if you want him, because when Deshaun Watson comes back and he has that first game of 100-plus yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, when Deshaun Watson does come back, it could be like that window is slam shut whenever he has that first game, 11 catches, 100-something yards, a couple touchdowns. It's like it's over. Amari Cooper is locked into whoever's team he's on.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Bell as the other two kind of take a shot on wide receivers in Cleveland. Out of those two, who do you think takes over that wide receiver 2 role?
I like David Bell. What, he was drafted in the 3rd round?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah, and his range of outcomes is really all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs to beat out Donovan Peoples-Jones. Because Jarvis Landry's gone. There's a lot of targets. There's a lot of opportunity for the wide receiver 2 there. I would take the shot on Bell because we haven't seen it. We don't know what to expect. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's had his opportunity, and he's a good player, but by no means is he going to make a huge difference on your team.
Yeah, he's more of that deep threat type guy that really that's all he's got, I think. He's very fast and is going to be the guy that you kind of like a Will Fuller, maybe.
Right.
Whereas Will Fuller didn't necessarily win you anything, but
he could lose a week for you.
Yeah.
And that's I don't it's hard for me to find a lot of faith in guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like buying into them in Dynasty, because that's how it's going to play out. Mm-hmm. It could be 2 years of the same thing. You just have the long touchdowns and they're on your bench, and then you start on the next week or the week after or whatever, and they do 2 catches for 20 yards and that's it. End of story. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, Will Fuller hurt a lot of people too. I mean, because if say he gets traded, I mean, look at Will Fuller. He lost Deshaun Watson and completely fell off the map.
Right.
So they're very quarterback dependent.
And Jacoby Brissett's not going to be the guy chunking it 40 yards, deep to Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't know. I would much rather have David Bell. The more I talk about it, I'm talking myself into it.
Yeah, me too. I think we have to talk, because I was like, I'm kind of going back and forth, but David Bell, I think, is the play. He was real productive in college, so I think that it can translate well, especially with Watson. So we'll go and move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's safe to say that Deontay Johnson is the clear-cut number 1. They just re-signed him, right, for 2 years, I believe.
2 years.
So he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver in Pittsburgh, at least for the next 2 years. He had so many targets with Ben Roethlisberger because he's that short yardage possession.
He had 169 targets.
Yeah. Is he going to receive anywhere near that amount of work?
I would say it's going to be more of the same. He's just one of them. He's so good at getting open. And especially if Kenny Pickett takes over, just that'll be his go-to guy. He's always open.
I agree.
I think it'll be more of the same for him for at least a couple more years.
I agree. Yeah, people saying, oh, well, he was just with Ben Roethlisberger who couldn't throw the ball 5 yards down the field and everything. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, first of all, talent's talent. So the guy is extremely talented. I mean, that didn't just go away because now he has a new quarterback. And 2, why would – there's going to be instances where Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky, whoever it is, takes their shots downfield. That's going to happen more often than it happened with Ben Roethlisberger.
Right.
But why would they not hit the open receiver 5 to 10 yards down the field whenever he's open damn near every play?
Right.
That's just something that I'm like, that's not a great argument for somebody.
Yeah.
You've seen Deontay Johnson be a target hog. He's the best receiver on the team. As of right now, George Pickens might make a play for it, but you got a stud. Talent's talent.
Yeah, I agree. And
so,
like talking about that, Big Ben dumped it off a lot to Najee Harris too, because he was just a tree in the pocket. I do think there's going to be times where Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky, whoever, are going to extend the play and get outside the pocket and things like that. But you always hear, tight ends are like the quarterback security blanket. On the Steelers, it's Deontay Johnson because he's always available. He's always there. And I would not be surprised if he finishes the same way he did this year. Maybe not 169 targets. That's an outrageous number. But, 140 is –
yeah, that's what I was going to say. So – then you got Chase Claypool, you got George Pickens. We're seeing a breakout preseason, at least darling in George Pickens. But Chase Claypool had a rough year last year. But he's that type of player that didn't mesh well with Roethlisberger because Roethlisberger only threw it 3 or 4 yards down the field. Claypool is that deep threat. I think he's better than a Donovan Peoples-Jones, obviously, because he's that deep threat that can also kind of go across the field 15 yards or so.
Right.
But is he going to get surpassed by George Pickens?
I can see it happening. Chase Claypool is a very weird receiver for me. He is just a huge red zone threat. That's where he's going to score his points. Year one, he had 9 touchdowns, and then year 2, 2 touchdowns. And he had 109 targets and 105 targets. So it's not like he's getting targeted, but it's just, I want to like Claypool, but at the same time, I can see it. The touchdown variance is going to be there, and you're going to be disappointed a lot of weeks. I feel like he's almost the type of receiver that has to score a touchdown for you to be happy you started him.
Yeah, I agree. I want to say that this is an offense that can support 3, kind of like a Cincinnati Bengals. They can support 3 receivers, but there's so much unknown about the quarterback position right now. Who is it going to be?
Right.
So I think if there's one receiver in this offense that I'm going to be out on, it's Claypool right now. It'll be very easy for me to get back in on him because I was a big Chase Claypool fan.
Right.
Coming out of college, just looking at his stats and his gameplay, he just was that dominant player. But George Pickens is looking like even more of a dominant player.
Yeah, he looks like a superstar.
Yeah, when he runs, he doesn't even look like he's running fast at all. So it looks like he's just gliding.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Like every time you get on Twitter, it's like another George Pickens highlight. Which I can see George Pickens becoming the number 2 receiver in this offense, but I don't know if it's going to happen as early as people want it to happen. So I still think there's time to acquire him. Even like, a month into the season when he's not getting targeted as much as people want, they're going to be disappointed. And then maybe that'll be the time to acquire him in Dynasty. But I do think he is trending up and he's going to continue trending up. And I can see him taking over the number 2 job in this offense.
Yeah. Right now is definitely the time to buy him because we might have already passed the time to buy him. People see that preseason game yesterday, and that's all I've seen on Facebook.
Yeah, people preseason. People go crazy over preseason.
Yes, they are. So let's go and move on to the AFC South here. We'll start with the Houston Texans. Brandon Cooks. They re-signed him to 2 years, 2-year contract extension this offseason. He's been that guy that, it doesn't matter the quarterback. He's been productive. He's finished as a number 2 wide receiver, I think, at least the last 3 years. He's going to have Davis Mills again for the second year. What do you think for Brandon Cooks? Is he going to finish as the number 2? Does he have a chance to number 1? What do you think?
I think he's going to finish as a number 2 again, but I think you can acquire him for cheaper than that. Just because I don't know, he's on a bad offense with Davis Mills I don't think is like necessarily a bad quarterback, but I definitely wouldn't say he's a good quarterback either. And that people that have that type of receiver on their team, they want to move on before it gets worse.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, like I'm looking at Brandon Cook's career finishes right here, wide receiver 14 and wide receiver 9 with New Orleans. He went to New England, wide receiver 12. Went to the Rams, he was wide receiver 13. And then 2 years in Houston, wide receiver 15, wide receiver 20.
Yeah. Brandon Cooks is he's a good player. I mean, he's not somebody that is going to win you weeks, I don't think. But he's not going to hurt you.
Right.
I mean, he's going to be that steady number 2 wide receiver. I actually just made a trade for him. One of my leagues here. Hang on. Because I want to get your opinion on what it is. That's what it was. I got rid of Cortland Sutton, and I got Brandon Cooks and Miles Sanders. I was short at running back. How do you feel about that? Because I feel like that's kind of the range that he would go in.
Right. I like it because I like Miles Sanders too. I think he's kind of a value right now, and you can buy the dip on him. I know a lot of people are expecting like a Cortland Sutton breakout. I've seen some people have him ranked inside the top 12, and I can see it. But Brandon Cooks is the number 1 wide receiver, no questions asked, on his team, and he's going to continue to be that. He's going to get his targets. He had let me see here, 134 last year, finished with 90 catches for 1,037 yards.
Yeah,
and it's just. 6 touchdowns too. It's not like he's a big touchdown machine, but he gets his, and so I like that trade. I think it's fair. I don't think like it was a huge swing in either direction. But,
it was more just to kind of. I mean, I looked at it as I'm not taking a huge hit. I mean, I don't think I'm taking a hit at all in possible wide receiver production. I mean, because. We'll talk about the Broncos more, but there's a lot of wide receivers right now in Denver. So, like you said, there's only one really in Houston that's going to be the target hog. I mean, there's a couple breakout candidates, but
yeah, year in year out, Brandon Cooks produces on the field. When he plays, he's good, and he's 28, like close to being 29. It's not like he's entering his age 30 season, something like that.
Yeah, I agree. A couple other ones that might be a breakout. I know you got Nico Collins, and then for Dynasty, John Mechie. Do you think – obviously, John Mechie's not going to play this year. He got diagnosed with leukemia, I believe, right? I think it was leukemia. Cancer of some kind. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. And we wish him all the best.
Yes, for sure. Horrible situation. But what do you think about Nico Collins and John Mechie? Do you like them or –
I mean, I like Nico Collins. I think he's talented. We barely saw him.
Yeah, exactly.
Last year, he had 61 targets, which I mean isn't terrible, but 33 catches on the year. I'm afraid if you had Nico Collins on a dynasty team, he would be that guy that you sit on for a couple years waiting for the breakout to happen, or where he even enters the territory of being a flex play or like bye week fill-in type guy.
Yeah.
I like him, but I just don't know if I'd be willing to wait until that does happen, because we don't know how good Davis Mills is going to be or their next quarterback situation. They're in rebuild mode, so you could be waiting a couple years for really anything to happen from Nico Collins.
I agree. Both those receivers are probably going to have to be a deep roster league that would take a chance. I mean, I'm going to put both of them if I can on my taxi squad if I can. But that's really all I'm going to take a shot on.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, they're the top players. Like, if they're available, they need to be rostered.
Yeah, exactly.
But they'll sit on your roster for who knows how long.
Yep, I agree. Let's go move on to Indianapolis here. Just like in Houston, you have a clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in Michael Pittman. A lot of people are projecting he's going to be a stud this year. He was another one that in college just looked unbelievable. But he broke out last year. Does it continue this year?
I think it does. I know people are crazy for Michael Pittman, and there's a good reason for that. Matt Ryan, we saw how he targeted Julio Jones. We saw how he targeted Calvin Ridley, and I think Michael Pittman's going to get that same type of target share. And I think Matt Ryan is still, he's decent enough to give you a good fantasy receiver.
Yeah.
Michael Pittman profiles as an alpha wide receiver, and really no competition. I actually just wrote an article, and I genuinely believe that like Nyheim Hines could be the second leading receiver on this team by the end of the year. I don't know. I know they drafted Alec Pierce, but Michael Pittman, there's so many good things, good like positive vibes around his situation for him to really, really, truly break out this year.
I agree, man. It's funny you say about Nyheim Hines because their coach, I'm trying to blank on the name right now.
Frank Reich.
Frank Reich, yeah. He actually came out and said if he was playing fantasy, Nyheim Hines is somebody he'd be buying. Now, that's a coach talking about his player, but I think that was kind of a lead into, he's going to be involved a lot in the passing game. Obviously, you're never going to take Jonathan Taylor off the field if you don't have to.
Right.
But there's a lot of questions in the receiving game. You could see Nyheim Hines, who is a very good pass-catching running back, step up and take that role. But Pittman, like I said, number one, he's clear-cut number one. I have him as a big breakout. I think Matt Ryan still got it. I think last year was just kind of a product of he didn't really have a whole lot other than Kyle Pitts, and the offensive line was horrible. So he's getting an upgrade in number of targets to throw to, and his offensive line is maybe number one in the league.
That's like the complete opposite from last year. I was trying to look for a trade because I know that I was in a trade involved with Michael Pittman. I actually traded him away, but I can't find it. I wanted to see what you thought of what my return.
Yeah.
But
while you're looking for it, you got Paris Campbell and Alec Pierce. All right. In a perfect world, Paris Campbell stays healthy.
Perfect world, yeah.
Who do you think's that number two? Do you think Paris Campbell still or Alec Pierce?
I think it would still be Paris Campbell. I remember when he came out of college, like all his metrics were off the charts, and I would love for him to stay healthy so we can see what he does on the field. Obviously, if you're going to acquire him in Dynasty, his value is not crazy right now because he's never been able to stay on the field. But they drafted Alec Pierce, and I'm afraid that they're going to be so quick to replace Paris Campbell if he doesn't come out and produce, or obviously even if he's like dealing with a minor injury, I think they're just going to move on, just cut their losses, and it's going to be Alec Pierce from then on.
Yep.
And I like Alec Pierce too. I would be willing to take a shot on either of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the offense is going to be good enough to support at least two. Like you said, if Paris Campbell doesn't come out and just explode, I think they're going to be done because they've waited on, 3 years now? And he's been injured all 3, I believe, 2 or 3. So if he doesn't come out as just a complete stud, I think Alec Pierce takes over, and I think he could be fairly quick. So I think if I have to take a chance, I'm taking a chance on Alec Pierce. There's been a lot of buzz in training camp, too, about him.
Yeah, and I think he's a good receiver.
Yeah. Let's go move on to Jacksonville here. They acquired Christian Kirk from Arizona. Still got Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, Laviska Shenault. I would say Christian Kirk is the clear-cut number one with the way that they paid him.
Right.
But is Christian Kirk really all that much better than the 3 other receivers named?
Slightly. This is – and the thing with this offense, who's their new head coach, isn't it?
Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson. And so it was just a couple years ago that Doug Peterson was making Carson Wentz look like an MVP candidate. And I hope that Trevor Lawrence can take that step forward. I'm not going to say he's going to be an MVP candidate by any means, but none of these receivers profiles like an alpha wide receiver. You're talking – these are all guys that are better off being wide receiver 2s on their team. So I think Christian Kirk is obviously the best bet, but I wouldn't be holding my breath waiting for a huge breakout surprise year from anybody. I was so in on Laviska Shenault last year too. I drafted him everywhere.
I agree. I'm trying to think of a receiver on a Doug Peterson team that was really good with the Eagles.
Let me see.
Because Doug Peterson teams are focused around the tight end. I mean, you got Dallas Goedert. He helped with Travis Kelce. So you're looking at. I mean, it's already been displayed who had the first touchdown from Trevor Lawrence this preseason. Evan Ingram. So I just think that the tight end is going to be the primary focus in the offense, like we've seen from the history from Doug Peterson ran offenses. I don't know if there's a receiver. I want to say Christian Kirk is going to be it, but I mean, he wasn't great in Arizona, or else they would have kept him.
Right.
Laviska Shenault, I think, is kind of the one that's going to be used the most in different areas. I mean, you're going to see Laviska Shenault probably in the backfield a couple times.
Yeah, he's definitely that run after the catch.
Yeah, he's the guy get in space and let him go to work. So, honest to God, if I'm going to take a shot on any of these guys, I think it's going to be Laviska Shenault. And
I'm right there with you. I love Laviska. I loved him last year, like I said.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give up on him yet just after one season. The thing with the Jaguars as a whole is just I want to just – if I could just completely forget all of last season, the Urban Meyer experiment, I just – because it's going to be a completely different situation this year. It was such a bad deal last year.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it could be – we could be talking about this again next year and wow, every single Jaguars receiver was a value. They all were just outplayed their ADP in redraft, and Dynasty they were buy lows.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see what Trevor Lawrence is all about because the best quarterbacks make the best receivers, I think. So we'll see if Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback and he can turn one or two of these guys into good, if not studs.
Yeah, fantasy relevant at least.
Yeah, something. So let's go move on to Tennessee here. Newly drafted Treylon Burks. He's had some issues getting on the field at the beginning of the offseason with his asthma, but he's looking pretty good right now. Did you have him as your number one wide receiver, like a lot of people did in this draft?
No, I mean he was 2 or 3. I mean he was definitely up there. I mean everybody had him up there, and he steps into probably one of the best situations for a rookie wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
If people are panicking on the whole asthma thing and, missing practice, this and that, I would try to buy in as much as I could.
Do you think he's A.J. Brown 2.0?
I would love to think that.
Yeah.
But that's a high bar. A.J. Brown is, he's next level good.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do think that the issue is, so Robert Woods is on the Titans, and I just think he is going to get peppered with targets a lot too. I think there's going to be a lot of weeks where you're frustrated that Robert Woods is on the Titans because I still think – I mean, I don't even know if you remember last year Robert Woods was being drafted. It was like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods were ranked back-to-back. People were drafting them back-to-back because they were the same type of player, and I still think he has some left in the tank.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Long term, I think Treylon Burks is going to be fantastic, though.
Oh yeah, long term, Treylon Burks is. I mean, he's going to be great. But for this year alone, until Derrick Henry's gone, the Titans are going to be so run heavy.
Right.
And I would say that, I mean, AJ Brown was still relevant in this offense, but he was the only weapon there. There was not really another great receiver while AJ Brown was there. That's why he was so good, was he was the only one getting targeted.
Right. Yeah, scoring all the receiving touchdowns. He was
You got Burks, you got Woods, and even Nick Westbrook-Ikine had – I mean, he was starting to come on a little bit.
Yeah, he had a couple, flashy weeks there where he was –
yeah, so you might see him step up a little bit and get some more targets. I think he's probably earned a little bit more. So I don't know. A Dynasty, I'm for sure in on Treylon Burks. I've actually got Robert Woods in one of my leagues, and I'm praying to God he goes off week 1 so I can try to sell him.
Mm-hmm. He would definitely be the guy for that.
Yeah. So I don't know. If I had to pick one, definitely Treylon Burks for Dynasty. So,
and I think Treylon Burks is going to be good, not fantastic. I don't think he'll be the best rookie receiver this year.
No.
But it's like you said, whenever Derrick Henry's gone, Robert Woods is kind of aging out a little bit. Treylon Burks is going to be the clear alpha, and he's going to just command so many targets in that offense.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go move on to our last division here. The Denver Broncos. We'll start with my favorite team. So I love this one. Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. Who do you think is the number 1 receiver for the Broncos?
It's if I'm in a full PPR dynasty, I would probably rather have Jeudy, to be honest with you. But if in a half point, I think there's enough because I think they're both going to be really good. And we talked a little bit about it earlier. Courtland Sutton is on a lot of people's top 12, and Jerry Jeudy's not far behind.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's extremely hard because every report that comes out of camp is something different. Courtland Sutton day to day. Well, Jerry Jeudy stepped up today, so it's hard to say who's going to be the number 1 and number 2. You might have a case where it's 1A, 1B.
Yeah, definitely. It could be like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, or Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, something like that.
Exactly.
That's probably the better comp, honestly, is the Chargers receivers.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, like I said, I traded for Sutton, so I'm hoping it's Sutton, but we could be looking at just 1A, 1B. Both.
Yeah. The only issue is Russell Wilson is just so efficient. I don't know how much they're going to be passing it, especially with the running back duo that they have. Javonte Williams is just one of the biggest Javonte Williams truthers around.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
And, I think it's going to be Williams and Gordon in the red zone, and then Courtland Sutton. And they have, Albert O. A lot of people are expecting him to break out too. I just don't know if there's going to be enough touchdowns to go around where Jerry Jeudy managers are happy week in, week out. I think there's going to be a couple weeks that you're going to be pissed off that, all the other touchdowns are getting taken away from him.
I agree. With Tim Patrick going down, KJ Hamler is one that's got a big opportunity here. A lot of people are saying he's going to be the deep ball threat for Denver. Do you think he has some relevance here?
I do. I liked Tim Patrick. It's just there's so many weapons on this team.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be boom weeks for KJ Hamler, but he's super talented. I liked him when he got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, looking at the targets, Tim Patrick had 85, and that's enough he was fantasy relevant last year. So I think there's a path for KJ Hamler, but it's going to be boom bust.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't know. It's hard to say in Dynasty because I love the talent, but I do think he'll go back down to 4th or 5th in the pecking order when Tim Patrick comes back next year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe hold on to him for a little bit this year, see what happens. And if he's giving you something enough to compete with him on your roster, hold on to him. If not, I'd probably move on and sell him in the hype before Tim Patrick does come back.
Yeah, I think if he has one or two boom weeks where he 150 yards and a touchdown, see what you can get for him. So,
yeah. Someone to buy in on it.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to move on to Kansas City here. Lots of question marks here. You got Juju, you got MVS, you got Mecole Hardman, and Sky Moore. Who do you think steps up for this Chiefs team? I mean, that's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Who steps up for him?
I find myself buying it. As much as I don't want to say it, I find myself buying it on Juju.
Mm-hmm.
But it's either Juju or Sky Moore for me. I just feel like Sky Moore would be going so much higher if a couple, they brought in Juju. Like if Juju hadn't come in, Sky Moore would be one of the highest drafted rookie receivers.
Yes.
Just because he's connected to like one of the best quarterbacks in the game, one of the best offenses in the game. So I would love to have some shares of Sky Moore, which I don't, but I think he's going to be super good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably your one too. I know some people are high on MVS, but I think he's probably that deep threat type receiver. I think, but it's hard because who is that deep threat receiver, MVS or Mecole Hardman? So
I'm so done with Mecole Hardman. Like we've seen it. Everyone, like every year, I feel like for the past 3 years, it's been like Mecole Hardman, like he's the sleeper, he's the guy you want late, this and that. Buy him in Dynasty where you can. I'm done with it. I can't buy into it anymore.
No, I hear you. I don't know. I think Sky Moore and Juju have their roles kind of set, whereas the other two are, it could be this guy, could be that guy.
Yeah, so, and MVS is. We've seen it with him too. I mean, he's had his opportunities, and he flashes at times, but to really
nothing great.
Yeah, I was about to say, and he's not like a target. He doesn't demand targets like I think the other two will. I think Juju's going to be I think he's going to be good for the Chiefs, but he's definitely going to be like the volume receiver.
I agree. I think he's in for a big year. So we'll go move on to the Las Vegas Raiders. You got Davante Adams. They're hooking up. Him and Derek Carr are hooking up again, just like they were in college. Davante Adams has been a target hog receiver his entire career. I mean, he's sitting at above 150 targets, like last 4 years.
Yeah, something crazy. Pretty much a lock for double-digit touchdowns every year.
Is it going to be the same thing in Vegas? I mean, I think this is probably the same as the Tyreek Hill situation. Talent is talent. So, what do you think?
I think there's going to be a small dip, but I think he's still going to be like one of the elite receivers. Mm-hmm. He's getting up there in age. He's 29 going on 30.
I think so.
And he was so good in Green Bay for so long because he was the red zone threat. He was the true alpha. Him and Aaron Rodgers had that mind meld. Like if you just watch them play, it was incredible. It really was incredible at times. Mm-hmm. But I do still think Hunter Renfrow is going to get is more of like the chain mover type of receiver. And then Darren Waller is still one of the best tight ends in the game. And there's never really been a true elite tight end like that with the Packers ever with Davante Adams as far back as I can remember.
I agree. I think Adams, like I keep saying this over and over and over again, talent is talent. Davante Adams isn't just going to forget how to catch the ball. And Derek Carr is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league.
And one of the most underrated, in my opinion. Yes, I think this is going to be a great offense.
100%. I'm a big fan of Derek Carr. I think he's going to finish as a top 12 quarterback this year very easily. So I'm all in on Carr. But I think the guy that's going to take the hit in this offense is Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah. I know he finishes like a top, 13, 14 receiver?
13, 14, yeah.
And that, there's no way that's repeatable with a guy like Devontae Adams and then Darren Waller. I know Darren Waller was kind of up and down. Like I said, he'll be a chain mover, and there'll be a couple weeks here and there where he hits, close to 100 yards.
Yeah.
But it's going to be – I guess like just a volume chain mover.
I think he probably goes down to a number 3 wide receiver.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to our last team here, the Chargers. Who is your number 1 wide receiver, Keenan Allen or Mike Williams?
It's still Keenan Allen. And I love Mike Williams, don't get me wrong, but he's had the whole issue of staying on the field too. And Keenan Allen is like the pinnacle of consistency. I mean, I'm looking at his career stats from 2017 to 2021, wide receiver 3, 12, 8, 14, 14. And he's had over 140 targets in every single one of those years. He had 136 in 2018. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just going to be more of the same this year. I mean, long term, I would want Mike Williams because Keenan Allen's he just hit 30.
Yeah.
But at least for this year, it's still Keenan Allen, and then maybe next year the switch will happen.
Yeah, it's just I want to say I'm in on Williams, but he's had 1 year of double-digit touchdowns and 1 year of over 100 targets. He's entering his 6th year. So it's like, are we falling into the trap of he had 1 good year, he's just now a great wide receiver? Or is he going to regress? I mean, I get he has Justin Herbert, who's probably the best quarterback he's ever played with.
Yeah, by far.
I mean, I don't know how I feel about Mike Williams.
I know a lot of people are so in on Mike Williams because he got the big contract. He's tied to Justin Herbert for the next few years. But last year could have been the peak for Mike Williams. It could have. I mean, it's scary to me because I'm with you. He's had 1 year of 100 targets, 1 year double-digit touchdowns. He hit 9 last year, which, I mean, that's good. And he's has the potential for double-digit touchdowns. Mm-hmm. But Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler aren't going to go anywhere. I don't think Austin Eckler is going to score as many touchdowns again this year. That's almost non-repeatable. But I want pieces of the Chargers offense. I think Justin Herbert's one of the best quarterbacks, and he's only getting better. But if you're going to make me choose, I would say Keenan Allen still.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking Keenan Allen as number 1. I do have a share of Mike Williams, but it was on a team that I took over, and he was already on it. I mean, I think he's fine as a number 2 wide receiver, but I don't think you can trust him as your number 1 for sure.
Not with the injury history. Yeah. He's like the type receiver. He goes up and gets the ball, but man, he does not try to like protect himself coming down, anything. He's a rag doll. And injuries are going to happen with receivers like that. And he's so big, he comes down hard.
Yeah, for sure. What about Joshua Palmer? And then that'll be the last one we talk about here. He kind of came on at his moments last year. He's had some training camp buzz, but not a ton. What do you think about him?
I like Josh Palmer. I actually have a share of him in, I think, just one league. And I like him more long-term. It's like you said, like we were just talking about, if Mike Williams gets hurt, he slots into a really good pass-heavy offense as the wide receiver too, and has a huge chance to really produce for your team. Or even if Keenan Allen in a year or two is finally hitting that age where he's slowing down, Josh Palmer has a chance to ascend that way too. So it's kind of, like I said, I want pieces of this offense, and I like having Josh Palmer. It's just, right now, if you're going to acquire him, now would be the time to do it before that ascension happens.
I agree. I think Josh Palmer could be a definite breakout. Like I said, I mean, you're going to target receivers in these types of offenses. You got Buffalo, of course. You're going to target guys in Kansas City because of Patrick Mahomes. Justin Herbert's not going away. He's going to be top 3 quarterback in the league for a long time. I mean, out of every team in the league, I'm targeting receivers on those 3 teams.
Right.
Because you got the best of the best at quarterback.
Right.
So I would definitely take a shot on Josh Palmer. He's still probably not going to be anything more than like a wide receiver 5 type, maybe low end 4.
Yeah.
That is going to be my bench. I could spot start him.
Weeks to impossible to predict him.
Yeah. But that'll do it for the AFC West wide receivers. Next week we're going to take care of the AFC West. That'll do it for the AFC wide receivers. Next week we will take care of the NFC wide receivers.
It's a long podcast. It's understandable.
Yeah, these wide receivers. There's so much to talk about. So the longer shows, and you did good. I'm happy having you guys. I'm happy.
Yeah, it was fun. I'll definitely try and make time for the NFC receivers. There's a lot to talk about there too, and there's a lot of training camp buzz around some guys for the NFC too. So
yeah, exactly, and we can start getting some of those debates on with you and Charlie for Dallas and
Giants and the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure we'll both have plenty to say.
Yeah, he's a diehard Giants fan, so
a poor bastard.
I agree. But that'll do it for us. Make sure you guys keep on tuning in. We got that charity podcast coming up on the Dynasty Coaches website for the Humane Society. So make sure you guys donate for that because it's a good cause. We're trying to double what we made last year. I think we made $300 last year, so we're trying to at least double that. And then make sure you guys keep tuning into the other podcast. And we still got staff articles starting up here in the next couple weeks. So tune into that. Make sure you guys read on that. So hope everybody has a good week, and we will see you guys next week.